everybody. Welcome to this session on best practices to build and monetize your AI products and apps. I am Nandita Ram. I lead business strategy for software companies here at Microsoft, and I apply myself to help software companies build and grow your products on our Microsoft AI and cloud platform. I'm going to be joined today by industry thought leaders Alois Reitbauer from Dynatrace and Dave Uppel from Moveworks. Together, we want to share with you some of our shared learnings in terms of how to create compelling AI products that delight customers and demonstrate great value to them. Also, how do you make your tech choices between requirements, risks, cost trade-offs? We're also going to walk you through some of the best practices to navigate go-to-market strategies so that you can maximize your product success and take your products, more importantly, cost efficiently to market. So let's dive in. We at Microsoft have the privilege of working with companies of many different types and sizes. And it has been incredibly inspiring to see companies of all types and citizen developers, pro developers, and business leaders within them build their vision into ideas, ideas into products, and products into great business outcomes for the communities and the customers they serve. It's also been fascinating to see a variety of companies tap into the technology shift that we are in the midst of and bring great products to market, as well as transform their existing portfolio. In fact, we've seen some companies create net new categories in the market by bringing to life disruptive new solutions that have reimagined business processes and the way we build products. We're seeing a number of companies that launched new AI capabilities into their existing portfolio by embedding multimodal natural language interfaces so that their users could interact with their products using speech, text, video, images. We've seen product teams that have been able to leverage memory that is not able to just retain but recall user preferences across a vast variety of devices and apps and personalize user experience for their products. And we've also seen a number of developers be able to tap into the reasoning and planning capabilities to help users understand complex context and take action and actually complete some of those actions, giving back the gift of time. It is these types of technologies that really drives ambition in our industry and gives us all optimism and opportunities to build and create the next great thing. What we see across the variety of companies and partners we at Microsoft get to work with is that the drivers for AI-led product transformation can be many. But the two most important ones that we see commonly are, first and foremost, how do you increase revenues, respond to customer demand and competitive pressures by bringing new capabilities to market quickly? The second is simultaneously, how do you make sure you're doing and running these businesses efficiently, as well as creating new product lines that helps one future-proof your business? No matter what the drivers have been, we've seen three common patterns. Most software companies are in the midst of actively transforming their portfolio using AI. Second, a lot of them, and most of them, are looking how to shorten the time to market and time to value. And third, we're all having to overcome the much needed AI skills and also overcome the skill gaps that exist because of it. which is why throughout yesterday and the day before, you heard a number of announcements from Microsoft in terms of our Azure Foundry, Azure templates that help close these skill gaps by automating a number of these capabilities, giving you code samples, code assistance that helps you build and ship faster. Across the spectrum of companies, we're also seeing both AI-enhanced and AI-native product innovations that are totally reimagining business processes. Let me give you a few examples. In sales and marketing, we see different product companies that have already embedded agent assists, natural language interfaces, as well as personalization into their existing products to offer new capabilities to users. We're seeing AI-native startups completely disrupting customer support category, where they have completely automated both knowledge management and issue resolution. We're also fundamentally seeing these companies change how they build and launch software in the market by moving more towards agentic frameworks. For those of you that are building industry-specific vertical solutions, we see similar patterns. We see natural language interfaces, agent assistance, as well as personalization showing up in patient experience products in healthcare. We see similar capabilities in asset management, in banking, and we see similar capabilities yet again in terms of insurance and claims management processes. We're also finding new AI being used for new types of simulations and modeling for supply chain, in retail, in manufacturing, as well as incident response management in energy and sustainability. These are just a few examples to give you a sense of what types of use cases product companies are exploring. But what's really interesting is that in terms of best practices, we find two core observations. First is that companies that are able to bring such product capabilities successfully into market and monetize them relatively quickly are following a simple three-step structured process, starting with identifying and prioritizing your use cases. Second, building minimally viable products that demonstrate the value of it and gives you the learnings that you need to then productionize them. And third, productionizing those minimally viable products that have the most customer adoption as well as perceived value. And across these three steps, these companies are also rooting themselves in planning and assessing all three key areas that maximizes product success, starting with experience. This involves understanding the targeted personas, what are the capabilities that are of most value to them, and what is their willingness to pay for it. It includes technology feasibility in terms of really understanding your requirements, your trade-offs, as well as your risks. Lastly, but equally importantly, is the business viability, both in terms of time and cost. Now, to unpack top FAQs in each of these areas, I would like to invite on stage one of our subject matter experts, Alois Reitbauer from Dynatrace. Hi, Alois.
Hello.
Thank you for the woohoo, by the way. I didn't get one. Let's start by having you, Alois, introduce yourself to our audience here.
I'm Alois Reitbauer. I work for Dynatrace as their Chief Technology Strategist. And over the last 1.5 years, I've seen how we can integrate generative AI into our overall AI platform. And yeah, I'm happy to be here today to share some of the insights of what we built in-house here and also how we're dealing with other AI use cases beyond that.
OK, let's get started then.
Yes.
Alois, we find that across our different companies, the maturity in terms of enhancing AI capabilities was first. 16, 18 months ago, we saw a variety of companies very quickly infuse AI into their products through chatbot, summarization, personalization capabilities. We're now finding a lot of companies move towards using AI to build AI-related products very quickly. But we have a good number of customers and partners that are moving towards more AI-native product capabilities such that they become core to your product and roadmap. Where is Dynatrace in your organization in terms of this maturity curve? And how do you guide your teams in prioritizing your opportunities?
Yeah. So that's actually very interesting, because when we started out as the Gen AI team back then, everybody was coming to us with their ideas, what they wanted. Can we have a chatbot over here? Can we have some summarization over here? Use cases, as our Dynatrace is an observability and security company that are like nothing to do with our core business, like summarizing support cases, as you mentioned before. And they were coming up with a lot of those use cases. And I am also part of the AI Governance Council at Dynatrace. And what we very clearly established that there's obviously core functionality our product should provide, but for others we go into like these other areas. So I think it depends on the one on maturity, but also on the use case. I think your example of chatbots in customer support, AI-enhanced products, you have a lot of this information available, but there's no differentiation except you are a software provider who, as you mentioned, like one of those innovative companies that provide a solution for this to build this yourself. So don't build your own chatbot for customer support. This is definitely functionality that should enhance your product. The same for documentation search. And by the way, I think traditional documentation will very much disappear. So if you're not working on AI-assisted context-based documentation, I think this is something you should put on your roadmap pretty much immediately, because we get very good feedback that rather than reading 3 or 4 articles, people get it customized. And by knowing where they are in your product, the experience can get much better and actually bring down support. But it's a great example. It's not your differentiating product. You need it in like your overall product from business portfolio, so definitely go for AI enhanced there. AI assisted is having functionalities in our product, which for us was we have our own data lakehouse, like a data store underneath. And obviously we have a very powerful query language. But as we're extending to occasional users, learning a very powerful query language, obviously it's kind of like a challenge to them. And also we have more and more users that were using our product for more business use cases, and they're not that familiar with asking questions. Plus on top, not just having the query language, everybody who's using API system knows that understanding the query language is one problem. The other problem is even knowing where that data is. And that's where we started with Davis Copilot, so our own Copilot, helping people with natural language to actually create those queries, find the data, put it onto dashboards, and interact with the data. So that's the AI-enhanced functionality. So you can do it with AI, but you can also do it, let's say, the traditional way. And actually, people jump back and forth between the two of them. When it comes to AI native, a core value proposition of Dynatrace is that we are actually able to do automatic root cause analysis. So if you find all your alerts and problems, as shown here, we are able to tell you exactly this is the root cause of your problem, and this is how it's impacting this. So this is a core value proposition of our product, and this is where we invested. This is definitely something you want to do in-house, and it's core to your product. And I'm a strong believer that your product should be in their core functionality, really AI native. So what you're actually seeing in here, I know there's a lot of bubbles on this one, just to get an idea how like AI fits in there and also generative AI fits in there. So we're in the observability space. So first of all, we need to figure out where the system is working properly. That's where we have predictive AI. Then we need to figure out if things are failing, how are those related, and get them into some kind of causal relationship. This is causal AI. And we use then this information to actually feed generative AI to make recommendations on how to resolve a problem, but also the other way around. Think you say, I want to build a product, a dashboard for Black Friday. So you first need to understand the key components of your system. What is contributing to conversion rates? And what we've really seen is our core native platform, you might today call it an agentic platform, But for us, it's this form of AI, which we call hypermodal AI, where we combine those components together. But this is really baked into our product. And also interestingly, because you later on talk about monetization, this is not an add-on feature. This is really a core value proposition. I think that's what you will see, emerge way more, that people have these functionalities, but they don't necessarily talk about them being AI, but like in our case, helping people to automatically resolve performance issue and come to a zero incident type of policy.
So as you then move through sort of your own journey from AI enhanced to use AI, to build AI, to AI native, I'm sure as an engineering and technology leader, you're probably having to make constant trade-offs and choices between time to market, time to value. What I mean by that is you're probably having to make constant decisions like the rest of our audience and those online in terms of when do you build, when do you buy or partner, when do you extend what has already been pre-built as co-pilots and plugins. So how do you make these trade-offs?
Yeah, I think like starting really with the middle one, I think that's the obvious one. Like where there's your core differentiator, you should actually build it on your own. If you could get it off the shelf with some configuration, then you might want to rethink whether this is really a core product differentiator. On the extend side, if there's a service out there, like for not like your core value differentiator, but it does actually almost what you want, like using a system for customer support, you rather extend it and fine-tune it to where you want to go. And also integrate into other tools that are already out there because people are simply using them. I think what we will learn with Copilots, and even if you look at Microsoft, you have like different Copilots, GitHub Copilot, Security Copilot. I don't know even all of them.
We do, yeah.
But what you see, people will live with the Copilot or interact with the Copilot in the environment they feel most comfortable with. As an operations engineer, you might find Azure Copilot you go to. As a developer, it's going to GitHub Copilot. For us at Dynatrace, it's our Davis Copilot. So you really want to extend those other Copilots, and we see this happening more and more, so that they can interact with those others. Yes, this is basically AI talking to AI, but that's also where you go for an AI approach, which also directly relates to partnering with other people out there. You won't do everything for everyone, so you have to pick and choose where to integrate your capabilities into others, as well as obviously provide an interface so that other tools can integrate into your solution. Like when we, for example, discover a performance problem, it's obvious that we integrate with GitHub Copilot to maybe rewrite your infrastructure's code script, or to ask Azure Copilot maybe to for some other things that are going on there. And on the acquire side, this is basically about models and basic infrastructure that you need. I think you shouldn't build your own foundation model from scratch. Yes, you will fine-tune it, and at some point you need to do, but that's actually where you're like buying what is already available on the market.
So with that, I want to ask you the next big question, which is, we understand that anybody that's building products will need the most complete of services, which is why we at Microsoft build complete AI stacks, right from infrastructure, data, apps, enablement capabilities to AI and analytics. We also know that for developers, choice and familiarity is core to the innovation process, which is why we at Microsoft do believe in offering the most comprehensive variety of capabilities and tooling and language models, both open source and commercial. So I want to ask you, when you as a leader have to enable your teams to make choices across each of these layers essential to your innovation, how do you navigate those choices?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of repeating myself here, but really understand like what's your core differentiation and where you really want to invest. I think you've got great examples there, like infrastructure for AI. Yes, for sure, you can host your own foundation models if you want to. But if you think for us, for example, we have to house the foundation models that we're running across a lot of geos, sometimes even like local to a customer. And that hosting is actually provided out of the box. I'd rather see this like any other cloud service out there. Like nobody would say, okay, let's spin up a data center to run our applications. No, you would go like to Azure and run your applications on Azure. That's why model as a service, I think, is key. You shouldn't do it yourself. Also, if you're running a like global setting, it's like super hard to do it. So I'd rather rely on somebody else who's already doing this for you. The same with foundation models. While I think fine-tuning is key once you get more mature and into more specific use cases to your business. Very few of us will build our own foundation models. So picking a foundation model that is available, obviously you need to do a lot of testing. Now it's like maybe making them a bit smaller what they are, but for me it's more or less choosing a runtime environment for AI. And very few of us build their own runtime environments to like make a comparison that might not be perfect, but if you're running like a Node.js, a .NET, a Java environment, you don't think about building your own runtime environment. That's kind of where I see foundation models as well. You might have some very specific use cases, but for us it isn't. Unlike like the data platform, like we are in a very specific domain collecting security data, deployment data, observability data. And the biggest challenge is that we are now at the stage where we're in the very high petabytes of data ingest. And for properly running AI, we need real-time access in a schema on read capability to actually feed the AI. And that's where we're strategically in what we call our Grail, our data lakehouse that combines actually the data lake capabilities with data warehouse. We have real-time data warehouse capabilities. That's where we decided to invest. Going to tooling, we wouldn't write our own code copilot. Like, why would we even do this? Even in the remediation steps that we built into the platform, we offer you to pick and choose whatever copilot or code pilot tool you're using. Same for app services and extensibility. I think you want to hook into other tools out there that are AI friendly simply by extending your platform functionality much easier. And I think on the skilling side, I think it's great to see how much like even companies like Microsoft help people to upskill there. And we also built a program internally how we can better upskill people, but also try what you mentioned before, like the citizen developer type of approach. Mm-hmm. You don't suddenly, I think it's a bad strategy to think, okay, 1,500 people in this company now need to become AI experts in the next 2 months. So I think you also need to rely on tools that are out there and the abilities of platform to make it easier, especially if it's out of your core business. You won't, if you have your customer support team that wants to build a customer support solution or your documentation team, you'd rather rely on somebody who provides these tools and actually expect them to do so. To share one example, we have a lot of customers who use some of our predictive capabilities that you've seen before and also the causal AI capabilities to build their own more or less AI workflows, predict future behavior, understand how to reconfigure a system, and then later on push this configuration. We deliberately built it in a way that while we were exposing these functionalities, we exposed them in a way that they are very easy to understand. Like, say, I want to predict something on top of this metric. We're not asking you, which algorithm do you want to use? How do you want to set the parameters of these algorithms? Because we know that a lot of the people who are going to do this are operations or DevOps engineers. While they're very smart people, they're not AI experts. So I think that also fits into skilling. And I really liked what you said before, like trying to make the entry barrier as low as possible and put a lot more in the skills into the software than requiring people to learn this like on the fly.
That is how you can scale then.
Exactly, yeah.
This last one for this section is the big one.
It's a hard one?
Yes.
Okay.
It's cost. And wouldn't you all agree that is the big one? So I wanted to ask you, when we're thinking as builders and software companies, we're thinking about tech costs and considerations and trade-offs across inferencing, fine-tuning, hosting, indexing, and many more categories. How do you navigate this?
Now, interestingly for us, fine-tuning, I mean, we not do a lot of like custom training. The models we train is not like large language models and AI models. It's very, very tiny models for prediction, which we train. There we actually have done a lot of optimizations, and there's even like some papers about this, like how we retrain and when you retrain those models. I think that's key to understand when you train your own models. When do you have to retrain them, and when don't you have to? Fine-tuning for us, luckily, has never been like the biggest cost driver. Mm-hmm. As we go for small language models, it's done to reasonable hardware. Hosting, I think, is a cost, especially if you run your models highly distributed. And especially, I think, if as you move from prototype to production, with data locality, GDPR, requirements in different countries, you have to consider that your cost might suddenly explode, while your minimum commit might be like only $30K a month on certain like a PTU commitment, if you run this across 200, 300 clusters, that commitment massively goes up. So as part of like the hosting costs, also really look at your deployment architecture. Do you really reflect the deployment architecture you have with the rest of your application? I think what comes with cost is also capacity, because sometimes at time you see that you can't get the resources that you want right now because it's a scarce resource. So I tell customers who I work with on the AI observability topics, yeah, even if you have all the money in the world, you're not getting all the AI workloads running. And on the inferencing side, I think there's a lot of optimization to be made there. Like we were able to like reduce especially our inferencing time by about 30%. Like we work with very large context windows. And that's where we have to decide, like is prompt engineering large context window what you want to do? Do you need to go to fine tuning? Maybe you figure out that your vector database is returning too much data. That's really where AI observability and looking at those transactions actually helped us the most. And it's also where you constantly have to like tweak and optimize depending on the use case that you're running. Because I think the challenge with AI workloads is that this type of software is way more dynamic than traditional workloads that we're running.
That's a very comprehensive response, so thank you, Alois. And I know that for those of you who are in the room, Alois is going to continue to be there after the session. So if you have other top questions in experience, technology, or anything in between, just know he's available to take them. Thank you, Alois.
Thank you.
We're going to continue the conversation. I hope that was helpful in at least taking some of the top of mind questions on those two areas. But we know that equally important are go-to-market related topics, especially related to monetization and shortening the time to value. And I want to share some best practices that we follow here at Microsoft, as well as what we've learned from observing and learning from subject matter experts across our customer and partner networks. And we're going to have yet another expert join us to take some quick questions. When we at Microsoft, or companies that we work with and do so successfully in bringing products, we notice that when it comes to go-to-market strategies, one of the most helpful recommendations and best practices that we follow as well is rooting ourselves and starting with a deep understanding of our user personas, their usage, and their requirements. So that's our starting point, and that's what guides our product vision, our product strategy, as well as our roadmap. And from there, we move on to packaging and pricing, which we will share more of in a minute here. When we say usage, and we see companies that are doing this right, they have a very deep understanding of their existing products and the existing users, if that's where they're trying to enhance and put in some more AI-related feature functionality. If it's a new product that we are building here at Microsoft, or we see companies building, then analyzing what are the core requirements of the targeted personas, what is the addressable market, as well as what is their willingness to pay for these capabilities becomes super essential, including your own cost of goods sold analysis. Moving on to personas, this is where we do a lot of targeted analysis of the personas, their requirements to adopt, the change management needed to get them comfortable with these new technologies, the skill gaps and the learning that they then require. We also do a lot of deep analysis here again in terms of perceived value, delivered value, willingness to pay. When we move into product vision, this is where, as Alois was talking about it, we do a lot of thinking and analysis on what capabilities need to be core to the product, and we launch them as such, understand usage, user behavior, patterns. That is when we go on to build supplemental capabilities as premium SKUs or add-on SKUs, and also understand if in the long term, if some of these capabilities should be the core to product or nice to have, because there are a lot of COGS implications involved. In terms of moving on to understand some of the user patterns and behaviors, even as we've launched our own GitHub Copilot and a number of different copilots, some of which that Alois referenced, as well as when we see our partner base and customer base launching new capabilities, we find some of these common patterns in users. First and foremost, whoever the user might be for your organization, your product, they do favor predictability. Predictability in terms of what am I going to be charged for, what are my pricing, and how am I going to scale my adoption of this product. They also prefer simple choices. A lot of them now are introducing flat price offerings. We see greater adoption of that. Clarity of if you have multiple offers, clarity of that. We also see users wanting to make sure they don't have a degraded experience after they make a choice in terms of your different SKUs, to make sure that there isn't a throttling, et cetera, that's going to degrade their performance or their access to capabilities. And of course, we're seeing an increasing pattern of users and customers wanting to try these capabilities in your products and technologies before they choose to make a full commitment to buy, as well as develop their habits such that they can be retained users. In terms of how to navigate packaging strategies, for AI-related product capabilities, we see very similar trends that we saw with SaaS. More companies, actually, that we work with are launching capabilities as core to the product. As Alois was sharing, there are certain capabilities that when you make it core to your product, it helps attract, expand your current user base, but more importantly, it also helps you retain them from competitive pressures. Once you understand usage patterns, as I was talking about earlier, that's when you have all of the analysis you need and the structured thinking process to then offer some of these capabilities as high-powered capabilities to power users, potentially as an upgrade or a premium SKU. We're also finding, similar to SaaS, when there are specific niche use cases meant to service specific niche users, they're often being offered as add-on capabilities. You will see Microsoft's products in our AI, the number of AI services and products that we do have, follow some similar patterns. In terms of pricing, if you're wondering, okay, how should now I navigate my pricing strategy? We often find companies sort of triangulating their pricing based on three key components. First and foremost, how is the customer perceiving the value, seeing the value, and their willingness to pay? Second is competitor pricing and how relevant you can be in the market. Third is, of course, your own cost of goods sold. And this is not a one-time analysis, this is a continual process. And based on this, we see, again, similar pricing trends as SaaS. You'll see similar patterns in Microsoft's products and capabilities. A number of our products are subscription-based, which is a user-based licensing model. We also have certain products that are usage-based. You will see if your products are more so calling APIs to then help companies build their own products, and that usage pricing is most relevant. We also understand that a number of software products are customized to users in regulated industries, specific use cases, and that's where we do see custom pricing. We also have some of our partners like Tackle that are leading the way in terms of outcome-based pricing in the market. This is where essentially software companies are starting to price for the outcomes that a software product delivers rather than the software itself. It's really early days for outcome-based pricing, given AI-related product innovation is a relatively new space in the past 18 to 20 months, but that is one to watch for in terms of outcome-based pricing. Now, to share more and take some more questions in this core area of go-to-market and monetization and growth strategies, I do want to invite to stage another expert that we have. I'd like to call on Mr. Dave Uppel from Moveworks, who leads ecosystems at Moveworks. So, Dave, why don't you start by introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure, and thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Dave. I lead our ecosystem at Moveworks. And Moveworks is a platform for building AI agents that are geared towards all employees in an organization to help take the friction out of their work, especially when that comes to interactions that they have with service and operations teams like IT, HR, finance, facilities. All of these departments, they have their own systems of record, their own knowledge systems, their own workflows, and all of that's really hard to navigate. So what our customers do is they use our platform to deploy an LLM agent that's integrated with all these systems and shows up in their Microsoft Teams or their SharePoint intranet that customers can chat with to kind of solve their problems, automate tasks, not only answer questions, but actually do work for them. We've been around since 2016, and we've been AI first from the start, but this sort of GPT and LLM revolution has really reinvigorated interest in conversational AI and helped us all reimagine what's possible with agents.
That's fantastic. Now we have a big question for you. So we covered some aspects of go-to-market, but I want to ask you a broad question in terms of you've been a leader in the ecosystem space for many years now. When you think about strategies to drive business growth, what are some best practices you want to recommend?
Yeah, what we've seen with this Gen AI revolution is that there's been some fundamental shifts in the way that customers want to discover and evaluate this technology and these solutions. Especially there's so many different new challenges in the market. Things like the establishment of AI councils and enhanced security and privacy requirements, and a host of others. So we've had to rethink the way that we go to market. Both from a product perspective as well as an ecosystem perspective. On the product side, one thing that we've learned is that in this market, seeing is believing. One of the downsides of it being so easy to build an AI demo is that there's a lot of noise in the market. It's hard to differentiate a real product that's put a lot of thought into Gen AI versus just a little, tinker demo. And so for that reason, we realized that it's more important than ever to get your product and make it easy as possible for users to try out your product and get a feel for it. In our world, we've had to make some adjustments because our product is built on all these integrations with systems. It takes time to implement and integrate. So we needed to find a way to allow folks to try our product without having to go through the implementation cycle. What we ended up doing was we developed this sort of mock instance of our product. It's got preloaded data in it, some preloaded workflows, and we made it publicly available. We call it our playground. And we made it so you can go to playground.moveworks.com. It takes you through these scenarios. It lets you imagine, okay, this is your organization, these are your problems, these are your workflows. And then you can try out this agent and see how it works. And it's been a really great engine of growth for us. It's a way to drive awareness and cut through the noise in the market. And on top of that, we've added some more ways to trial our product. Things like what we call labs, easy POC light processes, a little bit of integration and customization, really POCs at all different levels. Another thing that we've noticed is that the value conversation that you have, like as you mentioned, with customers is fundamentally different. It's not like about whether you have this feature or not. It's about the way that you're driving productivity through all these many interactions throughout the day for an employee. So in order to communicate that, having very strong comprehensive usage analytics is very important. So we've invested a lot in that to be able to show prospects, show customers exactly what's happening on our platform, how productivity is being driven, what are the time savings, what are the labor savings, so that they can communicate that internally, they can understand and appreciate the value of the platform. So that's stuff on the product side. On the ecosystem side, we've noticed a lot of changes too. One of the things, for whatever reason, in this Gen AI world, it's become more important to everyone for things to work seamlessly. And what that means is integrations and interoperability between systems has become paramount. And it's really at two levels. On the one end, it's the ability for our agent to read and write data from different systems through API integrations. And then at the higher level, because all these platforms are building in their own Copilot and agent platforms, the ability for those to talk to each other at the agent level as well. So one thing that we did was we re-architected our extensibility platform to be able to build integrations on top of, and it made it from the ground up more flexible and ready for Gen AI type integrations. We call it our agentic automation engine. And with that, we've introduced a plugin library so that we can add plugins that we build ourselves, and ultimately that developers and partners will be able to contribute to as well, which is great. And so that with that platform in place at the higher level, when it comes to agent-to-agent integrations, you saw some of this. On the Tuesday keynote, you saw them present the idea of third-party agents interacting with M365 Copilot. That's something that we're working very closely with the M365 team, and we're also thinking of ways in which we can kick off chats with other agents. When it comes to getting people to actually build on this platform, that's where we know we need to put a lot of investment in as well. With any new technology, it's a whole new paradigm. It's going to take more continuous education as well as hands-on experience. So recently, actually, we've done a lot when it comes to on-demand content like webinars and videos, but we're also doing a lot of live events. So we did a hackathon at the New York Stock Exchange last month, brought together a lot of developers. We had dozens of developers building use cases on top of our platform. It brought a lot of excitement and interest along the way. And with that, we're also understanding, we're starting to see that influencers are cropping up. I don't know if folks here have noticed, but I think in this world, the way that a lot of organizations and people are learning this technology is through influencers, thought leaders in the space. And so what we are doing is we've seen organically in our community people who are, they're more prone to creating their own content. They like to do that. And so we're sort of elevating their voices and spending more time with them. So that's been a key way that we're doing both on the product and ecosystem side, making changes.
So focus on mind share to get market share. So that was a really good tip. In the 2 minutes that we have for this section left, I want to ask you one important question, because we do have observations within Microsoft where we're continuously seeing higher and higher adoption, both across customers as well as solution builders in terms of digital marketplaces.
Yeah.
We've seen great adoption of our Azure Marketplace. So I wanted to ask you, as an ecosystem leader, how do you think about cloud marketplaces, and how does that figure in your strategy?
It's so important. And really the big one for us has been the Azure Commercial Marketplace and listing our product on there, which I encourage everybody in this room. If you're building your platform on Azure, you should really consider this, because there's a host of different benefits. First and foremost, it allows customers to retire their MAC, their pre-committed spend. I think we've found that we've seen a lot of demand for this because folks have maybe bit off a little bit more than they could chew with their commitments. And so now this is an opportunity for them to spend that. And it unlocks budget. Once you have a customer who's really excited, wants to buy your product, and then they need to go find the budget, well, here the budget's already there. So it's a win-win situation, and that's great. It also allows you to scale globally, accepting payments in different currencies, whether that's euros or pounds. We get paid in dollars. It's really great. And then you can participate in these co-sell programs with the Microsoft sellers. They get incentivized to position your product. It's beneficial for them because they can help their customers, again, retire their cloud spend. And the more you sell through the marketplace, the more they're incentivized to help position your product. There's also a whole host of marketplace benefits you get when there's some marketing benefits, blog posts, webinars, all sorts of stuff like that you can take advantage of to help you drive awareness, and it's very valuable.
Thank you, Dave.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your insights. Thank you for joining us today. And I know we're going to continue the conversation if folks in the room have some questions for you.
Absolutely.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today for this important topic. I hope the session has been helpful to you. Before we close, I wanted to remind everybody that I know there were many, many announcements through the past couple of days, but I want us to have this opportunity to build the future together. And I want to call out some key announcements that are supremely relative, as I consider, to anybody that's building solutions, bringing them to life, whether you're a developer, engineering team member, or a business leader. We've given out a number of capabilities, starting with Azure AI Foundry, which offers you a lot of capabilities to build and ship quickly, as well as improvements to our GitHub Copilot. We also provided a number of templates in our Azure Template Gallery that gives you code samples based on use cases to get you started. We've also invested very significantly in the ISV Success Program. I encourage everybody to go to microsoft.com/ISV to check it out, because it offers you end-to-end capabilities, right from envisioning to resources to build your products, experiment, prototype, as well as access to different go-to-market benefits, just like how Dave was mentioning. Lastly, I encourage everyone to think about certifying your solutions as part of Microsoft AI Cloud Partner Program, because what that does is that highlights your solution in your specific categories to our sellers. And that allows our sellers to bring your innovations, your products, your applications to our customers worldwide. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everybody has had a great Ignite. We are excited about the times ahead. Thank you for your partnership, and more importantly, thank you for the opportunities for us to build together. Everybody take care, and we'll talk soon. Thank you again.